Okay. Happy Monday, everybody. I hope that everyone enjoyed their 4th of July holiday. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about food morality. All right. And it sounds exactly like what it is. So let me see if I can share before I forget. Nope, this is the wrong strain, isn't it?
No,
No, that looks
it's
right.
right.
It does? Oh, weird.
Yeah,
I can't see it on my end. All right, you guys can see the email?
yeah.
Okay, awesome. Great. So we're going to be talking a little bit about food morality, and this is something that it comes up with almost all of my clients in different ways, of course, right? And sometimes I have clients that different extremes, but to some extent I feel like maybe the way that we grew up around food, whether it's social media, social norms, like it's really common for people to say, oh, this is good, this is bad, right? And I kind of want to get away from that narrative a little bit and just talk more about like food is food, right? There isn't anything that's inherently good or bad, right? We can debate nutrient density, right? Food that maybe has more nutrients than others, a food that makes us feel good, and food that, maybe doesn't as much, more physically, sometimes mentally, emotionally. But at the end of the day, food is food, and we deserve to eat food. And, notwithstanding any sort of medical conditions, right? Like, obviously, if you have a severe form of celiac disease, eating gluten is probably bad for you, right? That is a scenario in which I would kind of use some of that language. But, putting that aside, for example, a cookie isn't inherently bad, right? Are some fruits going to provide more nutrients? Sure, but that doesn't mean food like cookies or whatever is bad and you should never eat it. So there's always a little bit of gray area, a little bit of balance, a whole lot of nuance, right? And that's kind of what I want to talk about a little bit today in terms of how to really shift your mindset perspective around tying in morality with food. And mostly because your mindset is really what kind of helps carry you through any sort of physique change, any sort of goal or desire to change how you're feeling through nutrition, right? So when we tie morality to food, it can often lead to a lot of shame, right? A lot of guilt. Um, and those are just things that can obviously weigh very heavily on ourselves. They can create additional stress, right? Which can then domino into a lot of other things. So let's talk about how we can approach food without morals. All right. If you guys read the email that went out on Coach's Corner yesterday, again, okay, food morality is an idea that certain foods are inherently good or bad, right? That, fruits are inherently good, vegetables are inherently good, but cookies are inherently bad. And I just don't fall into that black or white camp of thinking. All right. So again, this mindset often stems from diet culture, right? Things you might see on social media, things that influencers might say, hey, this is bad, don't ever do this. And then it gets trendy, right? And it goes viral. And that there is not necessarily science or research behind that, right? It's like, well, just labeling something bad is, kind of like saying, just putting a blanket statement on something, without kind of getting down to the root cause of things. All right. So no more value in food. It's simply nourishment, right? It goes back to what I said earlier. Food is food. All right. We want to avoid having any feelings of shame around food, right? Or around our bodies. It can relate and connect back to having body image issues or experiencing some body dysmorphia. And then that relationship then that you have with your body, that you have with food, is going to be affected, and it's going to kind of impact your ability to grow and implement new habits and changes and kind of get out of your comfort zone a little bit in order to make the progress that a lot of our clients want to see. All right. So 5 ways to overcome food morality. Let's neutralize this thought. All right. So recognizing when we have these thoughts of, this food is bad, or I don't deserve this, or a common one that I get from clients is, I ate really badly yesterday, so I have to be really, really good today, right? That compensation. Instead, a great way to approach this is to just acknowledge that you're having those thoughts, right? The point isn't to get rid of them completely and to never have a negative thought around food. I don't think that that's necessarily realistic. But rather acknowledge that you're having those thoughts and then try to put something that's a little bit more realistic or positive on top of that, right? So for example, I am going to keep using cookie as my analogy, right? I ate a cookie this morning and I'm a horrible person because of it. I didn't stick to my diet, right? So instead you can say, you know what? I had a cookie this morning. I really enjoyed it. And I'm going to continue on with the rest of my day, fueling and nourishing my body so that I can continue to feel good, right? Or acknowledging, yes, I ate a cookie. Actually, like it really didn't make me feel good, right? It gave me some digestive upset, or it felt really heavy, right? And, notice that I'm not going to more of an emotional state, right? It's more about physically, how are you feeling? And I'm going to reflect on that. And so next time I'm going to do XYZ, right? So it's always acknowledging what's going on and then trying to sandwich it something on top with something positive, right? And the more that we can start to sandwich thoughts that, maybe aren't serving us the best with more positive ones, the more that becomes a more natural thought process. And that's one of the ways that we can start to change our mindset and our perspective on these things. All right. Number 2, okay, practice mindful eating. This is something that I feel like we could have so many different calls on this alone. I know it's something that a lot of our coaches have touched on here and there. But mindful eating can go a long way. And only part of that is like food morality, right? So instead of, eating meals where there's a lot of chaos around us, or we're in the car going from one place to the other, or maybe we're by ourselves and, it's your lunch break at work. And so we're just like scrolling through our phone, right? Being able to kind of slow down, eat in a peaceful environment, even if that's at work, maybe it's turning your computer screen off for a few minutes, putting the phone down and just being with your food, right? How does it smell? What does it feel like in your mouth? What are the different flavors, textures, aromas that you notice, right? Actually like chewing your food rather than scarfing it down. A lot of that can help us process our food better, like internally, digestively. And then when we actually are connected with the food that we're having, right, we're better able to understand how these foods make us feel, right? What gives us the energy to keep us fueled throughout the day, or allows you to push a little bit extra in your workout versus those that maybe don't, right? And we can still approach this with a little bit of that kind of balance and gray area, whereas maybe there is some enjoyment that comes with eating your cookie, right? That's worth something too, right? As long as we can kind of, again, slow down, savor that, be present in that moment, that can have its value on its own. Even if, again, when you're kind of comparing things and what or food items and what makes you feel your best, right? There is a place for everything to a certain extent. All right. When we slow down, right, digestion improves. We're better in touch with what our body needs, right? Are you tired, thirsty? Are you content, full? Are you still hungry, right? That's the biggest one. And it just allows us to be a little bit more aware of our surroundings. We can make decisions, again, based on our feelings, which is something that I've already touched on, right? So when we're looking for something to eat, no matter what your, I would say your physique goals are, whether you're in a deficit, surplus, maintaining, just beginning your journey and trying to understand a little bit more about food, right? And about yourself and how it impacts you. The more that we know and the more that we can take food and separate it from labels like good or bad, the better we are able to get in touch with ourselves and understand what do I need right now, right? What food, what meal, what snack is going to serve me best? If you have certain protein goals that most of us do, right? Sure, that can help and be a little bit of guide, right? So let's choose something that's protein forward, but then you can always layer in, hey, how is this making me feel? Based on my past experience, how will it allow me to feel? Right. So we're always constantly reflecting back, pausing in a moment, right? And asking ourselves questions. When we get into a state of kind of go, 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 where we're not thinking or not planning or not reflecting, I think that's when it's easy to forget about ourselves and rely more on these kind of morality labels with foods. Right. Um, Reframing negative self-talk. I talked a little bit about that, right? So instead of saying, something about the quality of foods, allow yourself to say, hey, I'm giving myself grace. I'm enjoying myself in the moment, right? I'm not a bad person because I'm eating a cookie, right? We don't tie our self-worth to food. Just like we don't have to tie our self-worth to the number on the scale, right? The number on our scale can reflect a lot of things, but the kind of person that we are is definitely not one of them, right? And that's something that I think a lot of us, when we hear that, it's just like, well, yeah, we know that. But when it comes down to actually believing it and then applying it to ourselves, it's a little bit of a different story, right? Always trying to approach food again from more of a neutral perspective. All right. So again, getting away from labels like good, bad, clean, processed, right? Processed is one of those foods that can be an adjective, but it can also be a fact, right? It can be like more of a noun, or it's like this food is processed or not, but processed doesn't have to mean bad or less than, right? Or needs to be avoided, right? So how else can we describe food? I don't know if any of the other coaches kind of want to add to this, but there's tasty, right? There's comforting. It's not a bad thing for food to be comforting, right? Energizing, fulfilling, right? Satisfactory, right? Or being like having a lot of satisfaction. There are lots of, again, different ways to describe food that don't have to be on this all or nothing, yes, right, wrong scale.
I'm
I think a
thinking,
question that can be really helpful for beginning the shift, asking with curiosity and non-judgment around like, is this effective for my goals? It doesn't mean that if it's less effective, it's bad, but is this effective, or how effective is this? Can be really helpful in just becoming aware of the nutrient makeup. How much protein have I had today? How much water have I had today? How am I nourishing myself? And taking the morality out of it, but still not just being like, well, cakes and muffins sound good for every meal, right?
Yeah. And that's where that
Because we're
balance
asking
is,
ourselves
right?
how nourished.
Like,
Yeah,
it's
for
not
sure.
always like, well, I'm just going to eat whatever I want because that sounds good to me, and food doesn't have more like morals, right? Like that's one extreme too. And so we got to kind of meld it in the middle.
and that was something that I was thinking about as well, like, because when you talk about food as good or bad, then you have kind of emotions attached to the food. Or for me, that is like emotional instead of just, okay, this food gives me this much nurture and this much calories, and how does that go with the goals that I have? Am I able to eat all of this? Let's say that you call that bad, and are you able to eat that and still meet your goals that are connected to your physique goals? Or are you not? So that is something that I, and probably all of us, have experienced with clients where, let's say, they're nailing targets, like staying within calorie target, nailing protein, and having as a treat, and then feeling guilty about it. So I think that, like, there's a difference for me. At least I think there's a difference when, like, if you're nailing all your targets, you're getting in fiber, you're getting in protein, you're eating, a lot of whole foods, but you're also allowing yourself a treat. I'm thinking, like, applaud, you're having it all. Like, if you can make that work, that's
Mhm.
awesome. Like, why are you feeling guilty? And that's when I think there's no connection to what it's not about, or that's when the emotions kind of take over, when they have no place, because food is there to do a job. Like, that's kind of what it is, and what job it is supposed to do, that's different. We have like one baseline goal or job, and then it's different for the goals that we have. But if you're constantly making choices with foods that are allowing to not reach your calorie target, your protein target, reaching fiber, then I would say, okay, now we have a problem. Now we have to start being curious about why. Why are you, if I, want to call it that, self-sabotaging? Like, then then we have to dig a little bit deeper, if you ask me. So I think that's two interesting scenarios where it's like, one, you're feeling guilty no matter if you're nailing, all of your goals and everything, and you're having it all, or you're kind of self-sabotaging with choosing something that is not taking you towards your goal. And that can be food, it can be anything really in life, right? That's two different scenarios that comes from different places, I think. And I think always being curious about the why and having the awareness is positive and necessary many times as well.
Sure. I mean, I think that, getting out of that all or nothing mind frame that most of our clients really do come from, and a lot of them know it too, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think that they're always aware how that then impacts, right, the ability to apply their behaviors and meet their goals. It's something I think it would be silly to expect people to never apply morals and food together, right? I think that that's unrealistic. But speaking of from someone who used to live this wholeheartedly, right, before I knew better, being able to reflect on this now is like, wow, like that's a really restrictive way to approach health, right? when health can reach so many different facets, so many different, angles of your life, to call something, and I'm just going to go back to the stereotypical good or bad, right? Like, who decided that that was good? Who decided that was bad? And who are they to label my food, right? And so for some people, honestly, just realizing or acknowledging, like, oh, I do this, right? I put these morals on food. Sometimes that's enough to kind of help you start to break out of that mold a little bit. Other times it can be, more of a journey, right? More of a mindset. So again, acknowledging when this is happening, right? Asking yourself, hey, is this serving my goals? Kind of like Jess said, right? Is this helping me get to where I want to go? And if the answer is yes, well, then yes. And if the answer is no, then you can start to dig a little bit deeper, right?
And also, like,
think
is this good enough? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just to piggyback on what Henrietta was saying, in the example that she gave, it all, like, the person that's kind of hitting their targets, nailing them, like crushing protein, crushing fiber, like having the treat or a thing here, like that can be really I think it's a good practice. I think it can be empowering to practice that. It can help you continue hitting your targets. And I think that, like, it takes practice. Of course it takes practice to overcome those kinds of morality thoughts around food. But like with incorporating, like, hitting your goals and feeling really proud of hitting your goals and enjoying your treat here and there in the evening, or whatever that treat is, and knowing that they both fit and knowing that they both work is really empowering. And just like any other skill, it takes practice over and over. So I think, the more practice, it's kind of snowballs. It gets better and better and easier and easier. There was something else I was going to say that has, like, literally just flew out of my brain, but if it comes back in, I'll let you know.
That's the story of my life, Griffin.
Like, right as I was like, I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore because the thing is flying away. Oh, sorry.
What can be helpful too is to just sit down with yourself and ask very honestly, what is my relationship with food? What does it look like? What does my day-to-day look like? What are my, like, habitual thought patterns? Like, we can't, unless we're aware, we can't really make those changes. So some of these things that Kacey's discussing and bringing up might be like, bing, 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 yep. But when we can sit with it and say, okay, what is my relationship with food? Because we all have one, all of us. And with different facets and different, from growing up, from nature, from nurture, from so many different facets. And I mean, we literally get born into a food relationship, someone who is caregiving for us. Ideally we have a caregiver, and even that is a root, like, from babyhood. Like, what did your caregiver situation look like? And food is love and love is food. Like, it stemmed from literally birth. And so when we can, you don't have to, like, go that deep that quick, but even just sitting and being like, wow, different phases, ages, stages of my life all impact what my relationship with food is like today. What are the things I love about it? What are the things that maybe hold me back, get me in a loop, help me sabotage? All of those things, in sitting with ourselves, can be a great way of just being curious, again, in a non-judgment place of just like, let's just become aware. Let's just simply become aware, because then we can start to make little baby shifts and changes to our mindset around it.
Yeah. And
I think it was that awareness piece that jumped out to me. So like what Kacey was saying at the beginning, the awareness, not only of your relationship with food, but also, like, the awareness in the moment. I love the way you describe that. Like, be a scientist, be an explorer of your own body. Like it's no judgment, no good or bad, no nothing. It's strictly the facts. Like, I ate this thing. how do I feel? How energized am I? How did I sleep? How, like, all the things. And like, make a log, like take notes, be an explorer of your own body, and then make decisions accordingly of like, and it's, again, it's hard, it takes practice, but
Mhm.
like, just the facts,
No,
people.
no
Just the facts.
judgment, no shame, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Got to start somewhere.
Yeah, and I think it also takes like being present. And I think a lot of us are not present a lot. Like we are like just like going from one thing to the other and taking time to actually sit down and eat a meal without having any distractions, taking the time to like really notice how you're feeling afterwards. That also takes effort and focus. And just like any, working with the coach, learning something new, like educating yourself on food, getting that awareness, it's something where you need to put your efforts into making it happen. It's not going to happen on its own. And I think that is also something that a lot of our clients really realize when they start working one-on-one, that, oh, this is not going to happen on its own just because I got a coach. Like, I need to put in the work.
Yeah, you have to put in the reps also.
Yeah,
Just like
yeah.
with everything else.
Yeah.
And I don't want to discourage anyone either. I mean,
Oh.
I would say almost all of the clients that I work with have this mindset to a certain degree when we start working together. And I'm sure as coaches, I'll let everyone speak from themselves. Like, it's still something that pops into my head, but then
Sure.
I have the tools, right? Just because of the knowledge I have, the experience that I have, my own personal work that I've done, to understand where that's coming from, how it affects me, and then what to do about it, right? So if you feel like this is something that really resonates with you, I would encourage you to kind of, like Griffin just said, like, sit down and get uncomfortable with yourself and try to figure out, all right, like where is this coming from, or why is this affecting me in this way? If you're a one-on-one client, talk to your coach about it for sure. Right. This can be a really big kind of segue into making a lot of personal growth progress. If you're a subscriber and you're not a one-on-one client, like, talk to your friends about it. I guarantee that they can probably relate, or to your family members, right?
Or in the
I
group.
think the more that, we can discuss these things and bring them into the norm, the better equipped we can be to try and make some progress through them. Okay.
Absolutely.
Does anyone else have anything to add? That's what I've got for today.
I feel like you covered well.
Yeah.
So we could probably talk for another 30 if you wanted to, but
probably. All right, everybody. Enjoy the beginning of your week. All right. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Kacey.
Bye.